Why older men become more attractive, the truth nobody tells you. The misunderstanding. There's a lie you've been told your entire life. A quiet one, not loud, not obvious, but repeated enough that you started believing it. That a man's value peaks early, that attraction belongs to youth, that if you didn't make it by a certain age, you've already missed your moment. But here is the truth nobody says out loud. Men don't lose attraction with age. They just stop playing the game the way younger men do. And that is exactly why they become more attractive. Because attraction, real attraction, was never about age. It was about psychological weight. And most men don't develop that until later. When you're younger, you chase. You try to prove something. You speak too much. You explain too much. You care too much about how you're perceived. And women can feel that instantly, not logically, energetically. Because attraction isn't built on effort. It's built on position. And younger men are almost always in the wrong position. They're trying to win, trying to impress, trying to be chosen. But something shifts as a man gets older. Not overnight, not magically, but slowly. Through pressure, failure, rejection, and experience. He stops chasing. He starts observing. And this is where everything changes. Because the moment a man stops trying to be attractive, he becomes dangerous. You see, most men think women are attracted to looks, or money, or estatus. And yes, those things matter, but only on the surface. What actually pulls attention is something much harder to fake. Something most younger men don't have yet. Calm certainty. A man who's not rushing, not reacting, not trying to control the outcome. He speaks slower, moves less, explains nothing. And that silence creates tension. Because people don't respond to what you say. They respond to what you don't need to say. And older men have learned that. Not from books, not from advice, but from life breaking their illusions. They've already tried being the nice guy, already tried overgiving, already tried proving their worth. And they've seen where that leads. Nowhere. So they change, not loudly, not dramatically, but internally. And this is where attraction starts to build. Because when a man stops needing validation, he becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. Younger men are easy to read. You know what they want. You know how they think. You know how to control them. But an older man who is detached from approval, you can't read him the same way. And that creates something rare. Respect before attraction. And once respect is there, attraction follows naturally. But here is the part nobody explains. Older men don't become attractive because of time. They become attractive because of what they've lost. They've lost the need to impress, lost the need to chase, lost the fear of being rejected. And when those disappear, something else takes their place. Presence. A quiet, grounded, unshakable presence. The kind that doesn't try to be seen, but gets noticed anyway. And this is why, when a woman calls an older man intimidating, she's not talking about fear. She's talking about uncertainty, because she can't control his reactions. She can't predict his behavior. She can't read his intentions easily. And for the first time, she's not in control of the dynamic. That's what creates tension. That's what creates curiosity. And curiosity is where attraction begins. But this is only the surface. Because what really makes older men attractive is not what they show. It's what they no longer tolerate. And in the next part, we're going to break something most men never understand. Why older men stop chasing. And why that makes women start the power shift. There's a moment in a man's life where something inside him quietly shuts off. Not his ambition, not his desire, not his drive, but his need to be chosen. And most men never even realize when it happens. They just notice. They don't feel the same urgency anymore. They don't rush to reply. They don't over-explain. They don't try to fix every interaction. And this is where the real shift begins. Because attraction has always been about who needs who less. Younger men need validation. They need responses. They need reassurance. And that need leaks into everything. The way they text, the way they speak, the way they look for approval after every sentence. It's subtle, but it's there, and people can feel it. Not consciously, but psychologically, because when a man needs something from you, he gives you power over him. And power kills attraction. This is why younger men often lose, even when redoing everything right. They're too available, too predictable, too emotionally exposed. They're easy to understand, and what is easy to understand is easy to control. But older men, they've been through enough to stop playing that game. They've experienced rejection enough times that it no longer defines them. They've seen relationships fail, so they stop romanticizing everything. They've dealt with manipulation, so they start recognizing patterns instantly. And without realizing it, they develop something most men never do: emotional independence. And this is where attraction flips. Because the moment a man becomes emotionally independent, he stops negotiating his value. He doesn't try to convince anyone to like him. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't perform. He simply exists on his own terms. And that changes everything. Because now, he is no longer reacting. He is selecting. And that's the shift most men never reach. From, do you like me? To, do I even want this? That one shift instantly changes how people perceive you. Because now, you're not trying to gain approval. You're deciding who deserves access. And this is where women start to behave differently. Not because they consciously think older men are more attractive, but because they feel something they're not used to. Resistance, not arrogance, not ego, not games, just resistance. A man who is not easily influenced, not easily impressed, not easily pulled into emotional chaos. And that creates a new dynamic. Because most interactions are based on control. Subtle control. Invisible control. Who reacts first? Who invests more? Who adjusts their behavior? And younger men almost always give that control away. But older men, they've learned something critical. The one who stays calm controls the frame. And once you control the frame, you control the interaction. This is why older men don't need to try harder. They simply don't move the same way. They pause before responding. They observe before reacting. They listen more than they speak. And that silence forces the other person to fill the space. To invest more. To reveal more. To chase clarity. And without realizing it, the dynamic flips. Because now, the woman is trying to understand him. Trying to read him. Trying to get a reaction. And that effort is what builds attraction. Not his effort. Hers. That's the part most men miss. Attraction grows when the other person invests, not when you do everything perfectly. And older men understand this, because they've already failed enough times doing the opposite. They've tried being available, tried being understanding, tried being the good guy. And they've seen how easily that gets ignored. So they adapt to see it not by becoming cold, but by becoming selective. And selectivity is one of the most attractive traits a man can develop. Because it signals something powerful. I don't need this. And when a man doesn't need something, he becomes harder to control, harder to manipulate, harder to predict. And unpredictability creates tension. Tension creates curiosity. And curiosity creates attraction. But there's one final layer that separates older men from everyone else. And it's not what they do. It's what they've integrated. Because in the next part, we're going deeper into something most men avoid their entire lives. The shadow. And why a man who has faced it becomes impossible to ignore. The shadow in the final form. There is one thing more important than confidence, money, or experience. And most men spend their entire lives avoiding it. Not because they don't have it, but because they're afraid of what it reveals. The shadow. The part of you that is not nice, not agreeable, not soft, not designed to be liked. Your anger, your boundaries, your refusal, your ability to walk away without explanation. When you're younger, you suppress this. You try to be good, polite, acceptable, easy to deal with, because you think that's what makes people stay bad over time. You learn something uncomfortable. Being good doesn't make you respected. It makes you predictable, and predictability kills attraction. So life starts forcing you to confront parts of yourself you've been avoiding through betrayal, through rejection, through being used, Until one day, you stop reacting the same way. Not because you don't feel, but because you finally understand. And this is where the real transformation happens. Because an older man is not just experienced, he is integrated. He has faced his shadow. He has felt anger and didn't run from it. He has been disrespected and learned not to tolerate it again. He has lost people and realized he doesn't need everyone to stay. And this creates something rare, inner authority, the kind that doesn't need validation, doesn't need approval, doesn't need to be understood. And when a man reaches this point, his entire presence changes. He doesn't try to dominate, he doesn't try to impress. But people feel something different around him. A quiet intensity, a grounded energy, a sense that he cannot be easily moved. And this is what most people mistake as intimidation, but it's not intimidation. It's stability. A man who has nothing to prove and nothing to chase. And that is extremely rare, because most people are still trying to be liked, still trying to be accepted, still trying to avoid discomfort. But a man who has integrated his shadow has already faced discomfort, so he doesn't flinch anymore. He doesn't overreact. He doesn't argue unnecessarily. He doesn't explain himself to people who don't understand him. And this creates a very specific kind of attraction. Not loud, not flashy, not obvious, but deep. Because he is not just emotionally independent. He is psychologically complete. He has both sides, the calm and the capacity for intensity, the kindness and the ability to walk away, the presence and the distance. And this balance is what most people are unconsciously searching for, because it signals something primal. This man cannot be controlled, and control is what most interactions are built on. Subtle control, invisible control. But when someone realizes they cannot control your reactions, cannot predict your behavior, cannot manipulate your emotions, they start adjusting to you. And that's where attraction becomes inevitable, because now you are not part of the game. You are outside of it, and people are drawn to what they don't fully understand. But here's the final truth, the one most men are not ready to hear. Older men, Dante, become attractive because they age. They become attractive because they stop betraying themselves. They stop saying yes when they mean no. They stop staying where they're not respected. They stop chasing people who don't choose them. And when a man reaches that point, he doesn't need to be attractive. He simply becomes unavoidable. Not because he demands attention, but because his presence carries weight. And in a world full of noise, effort, and desperation, that weight stands out instantly. So if you've ever felt like you were late, like you missed your moment, like time is working against you, understand this. You're not late. You're just beginning to see what most men never understand. That attraction was never about youth. It was always about power. And power comes from knowing exactly who you are and no longer needing anyone to confirm it. That's when everything changes.